Plot: Scent of a Woman, 1992. Written by Rob Hardell. Frank is a retired lieutenant, Col, in the U.S. Army. He's blind and impossible to get along with. Charlie is at school and is looking forward to going to university, to help pay for a trip home for Christmas. He agrees to look after Frank over Thanksgiving. Frank's niece says this will be easy money, but she didn't reckon on Frank spending his Thanksgiving in New York. Voiceover off.
When you're blind and watching movies, what will you find? A blind superhero whose superpowers are acting like he's not blind. A sighted actor over dramatically touching people's faces. Or maybe the whole joke is that they're bumping into different places. A spectacular, macular degeneration. From tunnel vision to your television. And do they off this movie with audio descriptions? They're movie buffs who know their stuff. You'll be thoroughly entertained. Join Sky and Melissa throughout film history and Citizen Viking.
Hello.
Hooah!
And
I couldn't help it.
oh my gosh, I wanted to be the first one. Hello and welcome
I'm
to
so
Citizen
sorry.
Viking, the podcast that doesn't know if blind representation in film is right or wrong, but has lots of integrity. Hoo-wah! Oh my gosh, and we're talking about Scent of a Woman today. My name is Sky McLeod. We were just jumping right in.
I'm Melissa Bukta, the one who totally ruined Sky's intro. I was just so excited.
I mean, we're gonna say hoo-ah. We were saying before the podcast, we're gonna say it at least 10 times as many times as it's said in the movie, because it is maybe 10, maybe 13 times said in the movie, but feels a lot more than that.
Yeah, I honestly, I counted 13, but maybe I misread 3 hoo-ahs for something else. But I swear there's 13 of them.
Yeah, there's. I mean, I just saw something on IMDb that was like, we counted 10, but I didn't actually count. So who knows what's the real number of hoo-ahs? But in our heart, there is just an unlimited amount of hoo-ahs in this movie. Oh my gosh,
Absolutely.
we're doing this movie, Scent of a Woman, the Al Pacino 1992 film that won Pacino his first Oscar.
Yes, it did.
Or only. Has he won since then? I didn't think of looking that up.
Yeah, he's been nominated multiple times, but he's only won one for
Yep.
Best Actor in Scent of a Woman. Okay, I am not going to sit here and bitch and moan to the fact that I don't think he deserved an award or a win for this performance. It is a very I don't know if I can even say nuanced. It is a very good performance. It's not. It's there. Frank has layers. You know, this character has layers, and honestly, I didn't think he was I didn't think he was so bad at playing a blind person either.
Yeah.
What astounds me is that like he won for this and only this. Like, what about The Godfather? I cannot say all of the movies Al Pacino has been in our classics, but you know, I feel like this is kind of like, we didn't give it to him for that other movie,
Right.
but we'll give it to him for this movie because you know he's never won. I feel like DiCaprio finally winning an Oscar for The Revenant.
Right.
Like he was brilliant in The Revenant, but I'm like, really? this is what you've given the award for? Okay, fine, whatever.
Right, because like that's like the famous Academy Awards thing to do, of just like giving it to an actor in like probably one of their lamer performances after many decent better performances that they're really much more like well known for.
Exactly. Like, I'm not saying give it to Pacino for Scarface, God no, but you know, just okay, sure. But what I guess, and what also irritates me about this is it is the trend of giving an able-bodied person an award for playing someone who's disabled. What I asked myself during the movie is, if this character were not disabled.
He wouldn't have won.
Do you think he would have won? And I think the same thing. I don't think he would have won.
Yeah, I thought exactly the same thing you're saying when I was watching it. Was like, this is like the difference, like his performance in this. I really do think won, because he's, oh my god, an able actor who has to pretend to be a disabled person.
Right. Look at him. Going through all of the emotions and horrificness of being a blind disabled person. However, all of that being said, having finally watched this movie, I think that there is a lot to be said and a lot to talk about the fact that he is playing an elderly disabled man who society has basically thrown away.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And he deserves to live the life that he wants to live. I mean, he's for the most part mentally competent, but he can take care of himself.
Yeah, he can take care of himself. He, as a character, is truly all over the place, which is one of those things where I think it has just as much to do with the screenplay as anything else. Like, there's just like a lot going on. Like, this movie is 2.5 hours long. And the story is just so, there's just so many complicated aspects of it where at the end you're like, what? Why did we go on this journey? Like, it feels just completely like just all over the place. And it's so I feel like, right. But I think as a performance, like in especially like the blindness aspects of it, it didn't fall into like the tropes I feel like we see on the podcast a lot in the same way. Like he's kind of, his relationship with blindness is kind of weird, because like we do have occasionally he'll be like, I'm like upset because I lost my vision, and like he'll say things that are like very on the like, oh my god, it's so horrible, this fate worse than death of being blind, but then a lot of times he's just kind of like, I'm still capable, like, so it's kind of a weird mix of things.
He's totally, he's gone through the stages of accepting blindness, and he accepts this part of himself in one scene, and then the next scene he gets angry because something doesn't go his way, or something messes up, or he makes a mistake. Well, I'm blind. Right. I'm like, I know you're
blind.
Right. And I'm not saying being blind means you have to be like happy go lucky and isn't everything wonderful about life because I'm blind and it's great. No, absolutely not. Like, blind people have bad days just like sighted people do.
Right. But
100%.
It's usually like, I think there's like a difference between just really truly missing your vision, like, and thinking that not having vision is the worst thing, and like being frustrated because the world is not accommodating. Like, I think once you get to a place of acceptance, you get more upset and frustrated at the world, I think, than like anything else. And sometimes it just kind of felt like he was like, well, my life is over now. Like, because this is part of the plot, is that as a character, he is like basically suicidal.
Well, this is his one last at life, and and he's going to New York to do all these things that he wanted to do, and then at the end of the whole charade, he's going to kill himself. Right, and because he just doesn't have anything to live for, in his words.
Right, which is just kind of like, okay. Like, I mean, I've definitely heard things like that. Like, it's doing, I think, weirdly enough, because we have our two main characters, are Al Pacino, of course, and then we also have this young kid, Charlie Sims.
Played by Chris O'Donnell.
Yeah, and he is from Gresham, Oregon.
Represent! Oh my god,
it's so funny. So he's like this. I mean, he's a high school student, which is weird because the school he goes to really does seem much more like a college than a high school, and so it's very confusing.
I know it feels. I think it's one of those very, very rare. I think they almost only have them in New England, but don't quote me on that. Boarding schools in America.
Right.
It definitely feels like a boarding school.
And it was filmed, a lot of the stuff was actually filmed in an all-girls boarding school, but it's in the movie an all-boys boarding school.
Oh, Why does that not surprise me? Anyway.
It's just very funny. But I really did think it was a college at first, and so it's very confusing when one of the plot points is that Charlie is being like given the opportunity to potentially go to Harvard, and I was like, wait, so he's going to transfer to Harvard? Isn't he in college already? Like, I was very confused, and it took me a while to be like, oh, he's in high school.
Prep school. Yeah, high school. He sees some ne'er-do-wells who pull a prank on the head administrator, which, okay, we can get into all that in a minute. But anyway, he sees some ne'er-do-wells set up the mechanism for this prank.
Right.
And basically the prank happens, and then he and George, another boy who witnessed also, are called into the office.
Baby Philip Seymour Hoffman, which is so... I just did not recognize him until...
Oh my God, you're right. Oh shit! Wow.
I know. That was the same thing I had.
Insane.
Because he's so young. I didn't realize he was that. I really actually didn't realize he was that young. Like he was.
Oh my gosh.
Only born Philip Seymour Hoffman was born in 1967, which I did not realize.
Holy crow!
It's even sadder that he was.
God.
I didn't realize how young he was when he died. But yeah,
is one of the ones we lost. Yeah. Yikes! That is amazing. Thank you for that. So the dean of the school calls Philip Seymour Hoffman and Chris O'Donnell into the office and is basically like, "Okay, guys, you better give up the ghosts of who did this, or basically, I'm going to expel you, Charlie, Chris O'Donnell, because you're poor, and I'm going to reprimand you, George, because." You're rich, and your daddy is like a
donor to the school.
Donors, yeah,
right,
yeah.
So, and then it's really more Philip Seymour Hoffman's friends that are the ones who, I mean, even though I guess Charlie is sort of friends with them, but it seems like not really at all. It's kind of like a Mean Girls situation.
Yeah, they really don't. They're much more into using him than actually being his friend. Yeah.
It's the classic, trust. I don't know if they have trust funds specifically, but, their parents are wealthy and he is the scholarship kid, that whole dynamic.
Right.
What I love about this movie is just how the diversity of white male, punchable identities in this movie. Great? It's just I don't think I've ever seen other than maybe Charlie, every single character is a different kind of obnoxious white man. It's just really they run every white male archetype that just you want to punch so hard is in this movie. All of them. It's truly, it is actually, I was at a certain point I was as much as this movie is making me just so frustrated because I want to punch everyone in the face, it is impressive how they managed to just get every terrible white dude ever in there.
They the movie kind of sort of runs these two plot lines conjunctionally, parallelly, because as they're gallivanting in New York, Charlie is on the phone every so often trying to figure out what the hell is going on back in Boston, where the school is, where they live. Right. And then you have Frank kind of giving advice, but what really kind of drove me crazy, and again, I don't need my scripts spoon-fed to me. However, was Frank for Charlie singing or not for Charlie singing?
So unclear, and also just I guess he didn't. I mean, I think that there was supposed to be some emotional arc where where Frank thinks that he should just tell on the kids because Philip Seymour Hoffman is protected from getting any real repercussions, but Charlie is not, and so he should just be the one to out them so he can go to Harvard and fuck off. And then I think the emotional arc in the movie is that Frank, this guy who's just living for himself, I think, learns not to do that, and then he's he has integrity, he doesn't tell on these, but the students are kind of dicks, and even though their prank, I guess, is like not the worst thing, and the headmaster is like a fucking piece of shit as well. But like the kids are also little pieces of shit. Like they're not. No one is to be liked in this story. So it's really.
I'm like,
it's just
right. I'm like, okay, you're mad. I was having trouble at first understanding why the prank was even pulled, because you're mad at the headmaster because apparently the board of trustees got him like a Jaguar or something. Okay, you can be mad at that. Sure.
Is it like
legit.
99, like we are the 99%, right. kind of argument?
But you, but like you, the students who committed the prank, you are also of the 99%, because
or of the 1%.
Your fathers, of the 1%. Thank you, because your fathers are able to like come into the school and protect all of your asses. Right. So what?
Like what? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It doesn't make any sense. Like it's just why are you like, eyeing, like when you're a rich person, you're eyeing this other rich person who like got a job that you would. It's not like you were in the running for this job. You're not competing with this. This is the dean of your school. Like it's just so bizarre. Yeah.
And the plot wasn't even, we're going to do this to get Charlie like kicked out of the school, because these guys, these rich kids with Philip Seymour Hoffman, are like the most passive aggressive bullies.
Yeah, they're really passive aggressive. It's
incredible. Yeah, and I'm just okay, cool. And obviously Charlie doesn't want to be friends with them anyway. Even if he could afford to go to Sugar Humps or wherever they go, Sugar Bush. That I don't think he'd go with them anyway. So.
Right, because during Thanksgiving, the whole movie takes place primarily in the Thanksgiving break, where all the kids, the three kids who do the prank, and Philip Seymour Hoffman are all at Sugar Bush, which is in Vermont or something, and then we we're really only seeing Charlie and Frank who are doing their last hoo-ah in New York.
But the prank wasn't to, in the end, get Charlie expelled from school. That
didn't
wasn't
even
the impetus for the prank.
They really was just a happenstance that Philip Seymour Hoffman and Charlie were passing by and saw the prank, but it was really not planned for them to have seen the prank happening. So it really was not their intention to get those two in trouble by doing this prank. It was just kind of incidental.
Right, and this absolutely heinous prank is they hang a deflated balloon from the light pole where the dean parks his Jaguar, and during the morning they make this really they take over the PA system and make a bunch of snide comments about the dean, and then they inflate via remote control, I guess.
Yeah, it's very, very technically advanced.
Very technically advanced. They inflate this huge balloon, which explodes and lands shaving cream all over the dean and the Jaguar. Okay, yes, that's not cool. I wouldn't want to drive my $1 million car to a place and get shaving cream covered all over it. But you know what? In the end, no damage was done.
Right.
It's shaving cream, my dude. Go to the car wash, get your car washed. Yeah, okay, sure. If you wanna give somebody the attention or whatever. But expulsion over a huge balloon of shaving cream that affected only you. It affected no one else.
Right.
And
it's just
your
ridiculous.
car is fine.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it is super ridiculous. It's also this balloon is inflating, and so it's obvious that it's you don't want to pop it because it's definitely going to be filled with something if you just think about it for 2 seconds. Yet it's not just that it explodes, it's that the dean actually purposefully hits it with his car keys to make it pop, and I'm just why are you doing that? It's right under your car, is right underneath. Obviously if it's a prank, there's stuff in there. It's just so stupid to not try to remove the balloon without it popping. Why would you want it to? But I guess it's because they have a little drawing of the dean kissing the ass of the trustees, so that he wants it to be popped. But I'm just you stupid guy, you're being so stupid right now.
Right. Well, and then poor Charlie has to spend the rest of the movie in absolute agony. Because he's got Frank. Right, because he's got Frank he's got to help deal with, and then he has this
intervention.
Other problem. He's got to be Frank's intervention, and then he's got this other problem at the school because he might actually get expelled for no reason.
For no reason,
still.
just that he's not willing to like snitch on the kids, which is just like of all the reasons to expel someone, it's completely ridiculous. But like,
and and to be honest, because we've been talking about this movie is so long. This movie is 2.5 hours, which granted is long. It's not as long as certain movies I could mention. Zack Snyder's Justice League. Anyway, I can't even be mad. I enjoyed the hell out of that 4 hours. Anyway, so, however, all or most of this plot could be excised from the story, in my humble opinion, because the movie should be about Frank.
Yeah, it's like
it's Frank's story.
It really is truly baffling because, first of all, the first like 30 minutes we don't even meet Frank.
Right, we're setting up Charlie's life.
Right, because like everything we're talking about with the like balloon and the, you know, Harvard and stuff, like that is all before we meet Frank at all. Like it's just so weird.
And some of this stuff, and again, not that I'm a fan of like exposition dumps, but some of this stuff, this knowledge could have been gained in conversation or in dialogue between Frank and Charlie. Right.
Well, it's just like also kind of because there's so much of it, and it's so really unclear what the emotional stakes are so bizarre, because you're kind of just like, why? I mean, like, either he doesn't tell on, it seems like he kind of should just tell on the students, because it's like they're kind of assholes, they're not like good people, you know, you don't have a lot of empathy for them. It's not like the Red Scare or something. Right, exactly. They're they're dicks, and he could get like to go to Harvard by doing that, so you're just kind of like, okay, well, why doesn't he just tell on them? But,
I mean, I suppose he'd get it. Like it's hard because if you're thinking, okay, if I was in this situation or something, but I guess if I were in the situation, I wouldn't necessarily. That's a bribe. That's a full on. If you give up the other kids, I will make sure that you get into Harvard.
Right.
That feels so disingenuous, because it is disingenuous, and I don't know if I could live with myself. Well, because I'm going to Harvard on a lie, basically.
Well, doesn't he say that he was going to pick Charlie's? The dean says he was going to pick Charlie's transcripts to go to Harvard. It's made it, but I don't know. It was like during when he was like, "Tell me who it is, I'll let you go to Harvard." But it seemed like he was implying that he was going to shortlist Charlie. But I guess I mean, he could just be saying that he's only going to do it because of. But to me, it just sounded like he was like, "You have an impressive transcript." So, but I don't know. That could be totally.
I mean,
wrong.
I read it. I don't think you're wrong. I read it as a bribe.
I mean, it definitely was. So yeah,
I read it as, I'm going to fast track you into Harvard. Like, you won't have to deal with transcripts or admission. You won't have to deal with any of that stuff, because I will absolutely like use my power to just boop, put you in Harvard. And
which,
you don't have
like,
to worry
if he
about
has that kind of control, you would think that, like, in the end, when the dean basically doesn't get anything he wants, you still think that he's probably going to do, like, by embarrassing the dean, Charlie's probably going to suffer some, like, other kinds of, like, repercussions where the dean, like, fucks him over in ways a dean could, which seems like there's got to be, like, many ways a dean could fuck over a student when they're mad at them. So, you know, it doesn't feel like the problem was solved to me, but
no, but I really do like, because yes, the dean has power. He has a lot of power, but I really like the fact that he does have to report to the disciplinary committee, and it was made clear that this is not his decision. It's not just his decision. It is that he can make the decision that he wants to make, but he has to go through the disciplinary committee.
Right, which is just...
And someone could disagree, someone could stand up for Charlie. So I like that fact that he's not just this all-encompassing 80s bad principal dean character.
Right, except for I mean, he sort of is in that, like, you're right, there's usually not that other body, but it's, I mean, in the end, though, it just, to me, it just felt all so contrived, where I'm like, we didn't set up the stakes at any time that made any logical sense to me, and now we're just kind of whatever. But
Right. Well, this movie has two climaxes basically.
yeah, it really does.
Right. You have the bit in Frank's room, which it should be the main climax and crux of the story, and then you have the hearing at the end at the school,
where we have this impassioned speech.
Right. Now, all of this being said, if we did excise this first 30 minutes, this bit of the plot, the thing you would lose is this amazing speech. And if that's the choice that I have to make, to either to cut the plot out and lose the speech or not, I guess I'm going to leave the 30 minutes in because
I'm not sure what I would pick.
Speech.
It's pretty, It's definitely makes it funnier to me, the whole movie. Like, you're just like, what is going on? But we'll have to get to that. Now that we're 30 minutes into the podcast, we should introduce the character of Frank.
Yes. Lieutenant Colonel Frank, but Charlie just calls him Colonel or Frank because he hates being called Sir.
Sir, yes. Which,
Sir.
Sure, man, I don't know. He's a very eccentric, alcoholic, older
man who's kind of just stuck in an accessible dwelling unit, wasting away at the back of his family's house because nobody else in his family will take him. And Miss Rossi says when she welcomes Charlie into the home, "Oh yeah, he's really ornery because no home will take him." Oh, so he's gotten kicked out of nursing homes.
Right,
we can infer from the dialogue.
Just like it's just kind of abrasive all the time. It's not clear how old he seems too young to be in like an actual retirement home.
He's I would guess in his mid 50s, maybe.
Oh, that's not very younger than.
That's not old.
Yeah, that's really I was like thinking. Yeah, I mean, you're right. He doesn't even, I would say like 60, but he doesn't even seem that old. Like, he really does look like he feels kind of in his mid 50s, which is just, so like, a lot of the stuff in the movie, it feels like he's just too young for the character because they're making him out to be so much older than he is.
He's my dad's age, practically. And my dad certainly doesn't need to be put in a home yet.
Yeah, well, he's younger than my parents, if we're saying that. Yeah, so and my parents definitely are not at that age, so it's just a bizarre
right. Well, and she's like, "Oh, he's so ornery, and don't worry, he's so, once you get to know him, he's just a teddy bear," and da 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 da.
Which is not true.
It's not true, but it's kind of true.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
Well, the point is like, why you want to know why he's fucking ornery? He's stuck in an accessible dwelling unit in your backyard, and you basically do nothing for him. He has little to no stimulation. And I understand she's a wife, she's a homemaker, she's got her 2 kids and her husband. I get it, kind of.
Right.
But why, if you were stuck in an accessible dwelling unit and blind and just put there for the rest of your life, wouldn't you be pissy and ornery too? I would.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I would be as well. It's hard because you don't really see them like as interacting with him all that much. Like we pretty much only see Charlie interacting with both the parents, or what is their relationship to Frank? Because the girl,
I have no idea. If it was said, I missed it.
Yeah, they're honest. Like, because I feel like they're like not actual, they're not his kids. They're like, they're weirdly like his niece or something. Like, it's weird. It's like they're not like it's not them taking care of their older father or her older father, because it's
right. He's just kind of been tossed off on these family members, right,
who's like a young couple, like
just starting out,
right? They have like little kids, like they're pretty. They seem, like if he was like the age of their parents, again, he does not seem like, they seem pretty young, so that he would probably be like mid 50s or something.
and Frank can't, at the beginning of the movie, Frank can't stand the kids. He can't stand the husband. He can't really stand Miss Rossi either. So because he's lonely, he has no one of his age to talk to. It doesn't sound like he's even getting out once a week or something and going down to the VA or
right, which is
has
like,
a
why
phone
isn't
call.
he? Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that's
some
like
stimulation.
but it's hard to like. I just look at that. You never know, like what. Yeah, I mean, I guess I mean, I definitely think you're right that like he doesn't have a lot of opportunity to go out and do stuff, but he's also like he just seems young enough that he could take that initiative. It doesn't feel like they're stopping him.
Right.
Like
right.
that's the part that bothered me.
Right, and it's hard to say. I think that when he went blind, he just felt like his life stopped. However, when he gets the right aid in Charlie, because he feels like there's something that he likes in Charlie, he comes alive, and he's this, bon vivant, and he can go around New York, and he knows everybody, and he's got all these connections, and staying at the Waldorf and eating fancy food. Also, I love the tidbit about the fact that he's just been saving all of his disability checks. I think
that's so funny.
Awesome. It's so fun. It's just hysterical.
Because when he says that, it just sounds so much like complete bullshit like line. But then afterwards, I was like, but maybe that's actually true.
Actually, I can speak for as someone who is on disability. If I didn't have to pay rent, because that's where most of mine goes. That's where more than half of my check goes. If I didn't have to pay rent and I could save up for about a year and a half, I could absolutely do almost exactly what Frank did.
Yeah, I mean, that's why but it just seems.
But I can't.
Right, because you don't have someone to pay your rent. But yeah, it was one of those things where it just sounded like something a rich person would say as a joke to me. Like it was just like, ha ha ha, I don't have inherited wealth. Like that's just how it sounded to me. Like he was like, I don't have inherited wealth. I have, I just saved up all my disability checks. But I think, well, I mean, it's also like 92. So I feel like that was at a time where maybe, I don't know, was there a time where it wasn't completely broken system? I don't actually know. But he became disabled, so he might even get more money because he became disabled and he's a veteran.
Well, and he'd probably be getting something from the military too, maybe. I don't have any military family, so I can't speak to any of that. I couldn't guess how much.
I think you might get I'm trying to remember. I mean, I know you would get like benefits from the VA and you get like access to medical care, and it's a little bit easier probably to go on disability. And he was like honorably discharged when he became blind, even though we find out that he was like fucking around with some hand grenades and he went blind, which I guess like he just went blind, which I was like, well, at least he didn't kill anyone, because that's such an annoying like plot thing where you're like, I don't want to like this person who just like completely due to negligence like hurt, killed someone. But so that didn't happen, but apparently I guess the army didn't know and he went blind that way. I don't know, but he was still honorably discharged, so he probably does get some money from, but it just, to me, it sounded like such a line of like someone being like, ha ha ha, I'm being a silly rich person. But
I think it was
meant.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was meant to serve two purposes: as a joke, ha ha ha. He's just, he's using all his disability to do this, and also it's a line to justify why they can keep themselves in such a high lifestyle.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if there's someone who would be sitting in the audience and just be like, so how is he able to do all,
Right. Well, I mean, if he's not making money. That, I mean, you kind of do need an explanation of something. Like he does.
Sure. I mean, we go from, and granted, he doesn't live in a hovel. Like it's a very nice little EDU, but we go from an EDU in his family's backyard to the freaking Waldorf.
Right.
It's a very expensive hotel.
Yeah.
So it's fine. It really doesn't bother me. I laughed. I kind of smiled and nodded and was like, yeah. To be honest, I would probably do the same thing.
No, I thought it was funny. I just really did not. It just took me. It actually took me a few scenes to be like, oh, I think he was serious. Like I just really thought it was a line. I just did not. realize he was serious. But I guess I just associate getting disability as like, you're right, not having rent makes a big difference. But I'm like, you can't even live off that shit. How could you save it up? Especially like, I don't know, it's just like representation of people are watching this movie and they have no experience with like disability checks. Part of me like cringed a little bit of being like, oh god, I don't want people to watch this and think that that's like that disabled people are just being handed money like
True,
for
true.
no good reason.
Right, because to be honest, we're not. I mean,
and it's
I
a
had
problem
to work,
how much we're not.
yes, I mean, I had to work for years to get on disability, and
right.
the money, just to be clear, listeners, the money I received from disability does not go to Melissa's fabulous trip to Disney World.
Right.
It goes to pay my rent, to pay my phone bill, to buy my groceries. It's
and it's not really enough for all that stuff. Like they don't give you enough money to just live with extremely bare minimum things. It is truly offensive and horrible. Like it is a horrible system that does just does a tenth of what it needs to be doing, and think that just not great.
If you want, actually, listeners, if you want more information on what this whole system is and what it is like for someone to go through all of this rigmarole, the episode of This American Life entitled Trends with Benefits is perfect. It will explain everything to you. Actually, when I get into conversations about this with everyday people, able-bodied people, that's the word I was looking for, I always send them to that particular episode because it explains everything so well.
Yeah. It's it's an important, I think it's a really misunderstood system, and I mean, I think 92 it's also even more cringeworthy because that was at a time where there was just so much destruction of any sort of support for people, and it was kind of it was kind of as we were transforming into the horrific system we have today, like especially after the Reagan administration, and then like Clinton did not, or I guess that would have been we just Bush. Were kind of Bush. I guess Clinton was elected that year, so basically it was just Bush, but like they just like Reagan especially dismantled like the whole system, and then that legacy was passed on with HW and all this, so it was a very but it was also a time of, like, I mean, at least during the Reagan administration, like the welfare queen and all these like fucking bullshit myths of like people abusing the system. So I think for me, it was just like one of those things where it was also slightly cringeworthy of like, no, don't. Yeah, this is not the actual truth of it. But I mean, I think that logically what you're saying makes sense, that if he was just, because he did have a lot of he was probably getting food as well, though he was spending though he is spending a bunch of money on like phone sex,
the 900 numbers,
right? Which
that's one of his favorite things to do.
Which, like, I guess maybe it was their phone bill, so that's why they were like, don't let him do that. But you would think that at least is some of his money is going to that. But it did kind of like, also I guess the implications of that are like, disabled people can handle their own money.
Well, right. Well, but I was thinking about it. Okay, let's say he gets 900 a month. He would probably get a little bit more because of the VA and veteran stuff. But let's say for fun's sake, he gets 900 a month. He can still be putting away 400 of that every month if he is trying to save up for this trip. And that's still 8,765. That's still $500 a month to live on, which I know in the grand scheme of things, no one could live off of that. But he is in a position
if he doesn't have rent or food prices, if most of the things are going to cover.
Yeah, he can totally live off of that. I mean, hell, if he wanted to, he could put $500 away of a $900 check and still have plenty to live off of that month.
So then that's $6,000.
Right.
So he's got a couple plane tickets. But they're probably not that far. It's like Jersey or something. Like where? They're like in New England, Boston. And they're going to New York City. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're in Boston.
Okay, because it's a fictional school, so
right.
It's Baird, which just sounds like Bard College, which especially confused me.
Yeah.
So, but
yeah, they're Boston. So,
right. Okay. Yeah.
So it's basically like Boston to New York.
Barely a flight. Okay, so that's like it's kind of silly they needed to fly and but I guess they get a taxi, so you don't want to pay a taxi
Right.
to go that far. But yeah, so they fly, so that's probably not that expensive of a plane ride, and it was like, before 9/11, so she didn't have to wait in the TSA line. That's really irrelevant.
Right.
But yeah, so they're staying at the hotel for 3 nights. That's, I mean, gosh, I
That's
wonder
what it felt like.
yeah, I what do you think would be in 92 the price of like that staying at that hotel for one night? I have no idea actually.
I mean, I wouldn't, having stayed in New York in Times Square for a week because I got snowed in. It would probably be around $4,000 maybe, because I think in our hotel to stay 4 nights it was at least $1,000.
Oh my gosh, wow.
To stay in Times Square. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
This trip was years and years ago, so I'm spitballing it here because I never saw any of the receipts, to be honest. But I know ballpark what we spent because my friend and I were given a travel grant by the university, and the grant was $2,000, and more than half of it went to the hotel.
And for one night, or for like the whole thing?
This for most of the thing, because we got snowed in. So we went for 4 days, but we ended up staying a week, 3 more days, because we got snowed in. So we had to scour. This is a long story that's not important here, but we basically had to scour for another hotel that wasn't in Times Square because we could not afford it.
I see. Okay.
Luckily we found a Days Inn that was a little bit further outside of Times Square, and I think for about 3 days it came to like $300.
Wow.
But anyway, all of that being said, this hotel is the Waldorf. I mean, this is a famous hotel, so it's probably more than that. But the main point is if he were planning this trip for, let's say, 2 years, he was planning on doing this.
Yeah.
And he's been putting away money. He's got a nice chunk of change to do it right.
Yeah, that's true. I think because it's just like blowing all of the money that you would make for a few years, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it's sure we can give, I mean, it's movie logic as well, but
it's movie logic. Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so this is his last hoo-ah.
Yes.
And he is going to, like, the plan. Basically, I mean, he basically kidnaps Charlie in a way.
Yeah,
Charlie
actually,
is like,
yes.
I'm not doing this. I don't want to go here. I can't go here. He's only taking this job because he thinks it's going to be a way for him to go to visit family in Oregon for Christmas.
Right.
So, and it's over his Thanksgiving break, and he wants to make the money to then see his family on Christmas break. And so he is also dealing with all the stuff at school, so he doesn't want to be far away from school. So he is like, I don't want to go to New York. Like, I'm supposed to supposed to take you on a walk once a day, but like not, this is not what I signed up for, basically, which, yeah, it is kind of funny that Miss Rosie is like, this will be an easy $300 that you're going to make. And it's very obvious it will not be easy for him to make this money.
Right. As soon as we meet Frank, it's like, oh yeah, no, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Not easy at all. But yeah, basically Frank is like, oh great, like they leave and he's getting all his things together, and yes, Charlie is pleading, I don't want to go to New York, and then the cab pulls up and Frank's like, cool, well, I'm leaving. And which Charlie, out of pure obligation, because he doesn't want Frank to get hurt or anything.
Right.
And this Frank is in his care for the weekend. So
exactly.
Well, what's he gonna do?
Like, this is the part that really upset me. Is this kid Charlie? Like, first of all, he's just being fucking fucked with by so many different ways. Like, he's really getting some real bullshit thrown at him. But like what Frank does is so unfair to him. Like he basically, you know, makes him go somewhere he's not signed up for, but if he doesn't go, then, you know, he is now like, he has a job to do, and if he lets this person that he's supposed to be taking care of for 3 days, if they go off somewhere and die, which is what he's planning on doing, like that is not just like, oh, Charlie likes Frank. It's like his responsibility to take care of him. And so to put that on him, that now Charlie has to do all this stuff to keep him alive, and then if he like kills himself, it's just like such an unfair thing to do to Charlie, who's supposed to be taking care of him, and like using that opportunity of like the family being away to put this on this kid who just wants to go home to see their family at Christmas. It feels so unfair to me. Like, it's just like this poor kid who's just signed up to like, you know, be a like, you know, caretaker and aide, for a few days in a very like specified role that he has, is just like whisked away to another state where he has to actually be on true suicide watch for this person who is in his care. And not to mention that like not only is he on suicide watch, he's also like gallivanting with like Frank is gallivanting all around New York City and in all these different places. So he is also now not just needing to like, you know, make sure Frank gets food and gets to go on a daily walk at home, but also like that he doesn't get hit by cars, or he doesn't like, just like so many more things that, and Frank just does not give a fuck. So like it's just so unfair to Charlie. Like like it just feels so shitty to me.
I mean, he spends true. I mean, Frank is in the wrong here, because Charlie spends half the movie looking like a deer in the headlights,
right?
From, you know, and just kind of, yes, no, maybe, I don't know, yes, Colonel, no.
He's like pushed around so much, because he doesn't, I mean, like, what is he gonna do? This is not his trip. He didn't plan the trip. He's just like finding out about, you know, every step of the way. Like, you know, Frank is like, oh yeah, and by the way, we're doing this, and then I'm gonna kill myself, and so cool, let's do it. And this, you know, it's just like, it puts him in such a like an unfair situation.
Well, and then Frank. Right. And then there are a few points in the movie where Frank flat out lies to him to keep him around. When they get to New York, their first night at the restaurant, the Oak Room, Frank lies about the time that the shuttle leaves.
Right.
So not cool, Frank. I mean, obviously, movie logic, we know that Charlie isn't going to go anywhere. He's not going to, you know, he's not going to leave Frank, but the fact that he just flat out lies to him really doesn't, it never set well with me.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, yeah, he lies, and then also it's just like, because I also was like, why does Charlie, I mean, like, does he think he's just gonna, because I guess the thing that Frank is like, I'll give you the $400 so that you can just, I guess, disappear, like, because obviously the people who let you take care of or like hired you to take care of someone, it's not like they're just going to be like, okay, well, we're not going to pay you because you let this person die in your care.
Right. Well, and I think the $400 is also because by this point in the movie, they're kind of warming up to each other, and Frank cares enough about Charlie to make sure that he's paid for doing all of this.
But it's also kind of like saying, like, I'm going to give you this money so you don't have to get me home safely.
Right,
like, because
exactly.
he's depending on the money. And so it felt like to me like kind of a thing of being like, well, you don't have to like make sure I stay alive because I'm just going to give you the money you need. And this whole thing is about just you getting the $300 for watching me for a weekend. So if I give you the $300, it doesn't matter that I'm dead, which is like, doesn't make sense.
No. We know it doesn't make sense, obviously, because Charlie doesn't take the money and he goes back to save Frank from himself, essentially.
Right. Which is just like, and can I say, actually, Charlie, like, did not do, like, especially for a movie and for a kid who did not sign up for any of this at all, like, actually not bad suicide intervention. Like, he did a pretty good job.
I was really proud of him. But yeah, you are more of an authority on this end than I am.
I mean,
but, yeah,
he was able to remain calm and like during the whole thing, which is just like I was honestly like I was like, oh, this seems like a kid who's done this before. He, he's in Gresham. I was like, oh, he should volunteer at the youth line, which is part of. Oh, where kids can do it. I was like, oh, he would be such a good recruit for the youth line. He was really good. But he just like, I mean, he's in a like the kind of situation you very rarely get on an actual suicide crisis line call, like a very high risk person because he has a gun in his hands, he is refusing to put it down, which is like is like almost as high risk as you can get because like that is the most likely to be a fatal suicide and with a gun, and like if someone is willing to put it away then that can really help keep them safe, but if they're unwilling to put it away, that is a really not like it is a very high risk situation.
Charlie had already tried to prevent this in an earlier scene where we see Frank cleaning the gun because obviously Chekhov's gun.
Right.
So we see Frank cleaning and putting the gun, taking it apart and putting it back together again. And Charlie makes him surrender the bullets. And he gives him the magazine. Now, I don't know much about guns, but I do know that you can take a magazine out of a gun and there can still be bullets in the gun or a bullet in the chamber. And then to satisfy, to satisfy that, my little tingling, he gives Charlie the bullet. He's like, oh, well, don't forget the one from the chamber, and gives him that bullet. And then, unfortunately, of course, I'm like, oh, good. Okay, obviously he doesn't have any more bullets. Well, no.
Really? You thought that?
I'm very gullible, and I want the best for everyone. So yeah.
Well, that's very kind of you. I was like, wait, how do you know he doesn't have more bullets? You could just have more bullets. There's no way to know. Exactly. Like, because he asked about it, and Frank is like, I don't have any more. This is the last one. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you have to take him at face value, but it seems like he's lying.
Right. No, totally, in hindsight, totally lying. Absolutely lying. I'm just like, great. So one more lie we can chalk up to lying to Charlie. But I mean, and this is after they've started to kind of get to know each other and fall into this really interesting rhythm. Okay, so
which is part of suicide intervention is getting someone to kind of like establishing rapport and having them, trust you. I was actually like, this was kind of a fun, like, oh, what does he do? Like, yeah, suicide intervention critique of it. But yeah, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Well, yeah, falling into a rapport and a rhythm. I mean, we at the airport, when Charlie is trying to guide Frank and he reaches out to take, to walk Frank to the terminal or whatever, and Frank gets pissy with him. Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me. Ah.
Right, I touch you.
But, I touch you. And I was like, okay, first of all, I personally wouldn't have handled it that way. If it was a complete stranger doing that to me, yes, we would have had words. But this is someone who's supposed to be your aid.
Right, you say as your guide dog.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. However, I did like the fact that he did assert himself as a blind character and ask for a request sighted guide, and doing it properly. I have so many friends who know what sighted guide is, and my parents who know what sighted guide is, and yet still we end up doing it the wrong way.
Like in that they will like grab your arm, or
no, it's more of we're gonna hold hands, or we'll hold elbows, or like put one elbow inside of, like lock arms basically, and it's, they're my parents, or they're my friends, so it's usually not a really big deal. But usually if I want sighted guide and if I want it to be done properly, I usually initiate. So,
right.
Hey, and I'm not trying to like out all of any of my friends.
Everyone is.
But I appreciated the fact that he was assertive, and he did, maybe a little harshly, too harshly in my opinion, but he did assert and ask for what he wanted or
Right.
what he needed as a blind person. I don't want to be, I'm a grown man. I don't want to be pulled around the airport by some young person.
Right. Which, I mean, yeah, no, that was, that was like one of those things where I'm like, yeah, this is like weird toxic masculinity that he has to like fucking yell about something like this that seems kind of just like this kid just is, you know, he's like fucking 17 years old. Like,
Right. Probably
child.
never dealt with a blind person before. Yeah.
Right, which is just like, you know, whatever. But yeah, I was like, okay, but that is, yeah, I agree with you. It is definitely a valid thing to be like, because you don't always need a sight guide at all time. Well, because he also has a cane and uses Charlie as for sight guiding.
Right.
Which is like probably closer to accurate than a lot of the things. Like, it's not like butterflies are free where he's like, yeah, okay, Goldie Hawn, you're super like ditzy, not paying attention to anything. Let's just like gallivant down the stairs without telling you at all how to be a sight guide. It's not like that. So I did like that as well. It made me think, about.
And I must say, Frank is the loudest cane user I think we've ever seen. I mean, he's just bang, bang, bang. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, because all blind people use their canes completely differently than any other, blind person. So we all do it differently. I just thought it was very funny that
well, it's because you need to be able to hear the cane over his speaking voice.
Yes. Oh my God. Al Pacino. I can't even say this about Frank. Al Pacino talks loudly. In another way, he's also like my dad. He has one volume, and it's soft.
Loud. It's so loud. It was so funny. I was just like, it honestly, like watching this, I was like, okay, I feel a little bit better about the podcast, because the amount of times that Al Pacino like very audibly blew out the mic, like, it was so ridiculous. I was like, this is a movie. Like, it was really surprising me. I'm like, this is a fucking like full on feature film, and you have him like truly blowing out the mic quite a few times. It's just like so jarring to me. But yeah, it was actually like he spoke too loud that it is like, it's so funny.
I mean, he has such an interesting voice, and I'm not experienced with all of Al Pacino's oeuvre, so I don't really have much to compare it to, but he has such an interesting lilt and kind of cadence to his voice. He can scream and yell, but he can also kind of purr. That's the best way I can describe it.
It's an interesting the hoo-wah apparently actually came from his because he was coached by both a lieutenant about playing a character from the army, and that is where he picked up the hoo-wah, because every time
that doesn't surprise me.
Right. So that's where the hoo-wah came from. And also Al Pacino apparently did go to a school for the blind to get guidance on doing and playing a blind character, which
and you can tell because especially with the cane work, because I was just so happy to see a character use it so often.
That is cool.
That cane was a part of him, and I just felt really seen. Like, okay, cool, my cane is a part of me. I use my cane everywhere. I can't go out without my cane. And
it's funny, he even uses it in the little room when we first meet him, which is where he lives, and I'm like, you live there, you don't need your cane. But it was
I know, funny. I'm like, okay, well, hey, if that's what makes you comfortable,
like, it's your space too, so you have like put everything, it's like entirely your space, because it's like his little area to live in. So it just is especially funny to me, because I'm like, you are the one who created this space, but you're using your cane. But anyway, but he uses his cane almost too much, you could say, but definitely not. You're not like, why are you going in the middle? There is one point where like, why are you running into the middle of the street? But he has his cane. He's just also running into the middle of the street.
Right. At that point, honestly, I looked at the progress bar and I was like, he's definitely suffering from end of the movie itis. I.e., this is right before we have the suicide intervention. So I honestly thought he was trying to off himself.
Well, I did
like, who
too.
cares? I'm just gonna go. But then he's falling over into trash cans, and he's falling over into bushes, and I'm thinking, okay, he's not sick. This is not Moulin Rouge. He wasn't coughing in the middle of the movie or at the beginning of the movie. He's perfectly healthy. I guess he's just very upset and very sad and very depressed, and just knowing that this was his plan to end his life, but also realizing, I think, through his experiences with Charlie, that he still has so much life to live for. And he is kind of physically, it's actually kind of wonderful when you think about it, because it's literally his brain and his body are in a physical fight with each other.
Yeah.
About, should I do it? I should do it. No, I shouldn't do it. But I really should do it. But maybe I shouldn't do it.
Right. Which is,
kind of amazing.
It is honestly, as like, part of me, I think, was like, this is 2.5 hours long. I also sometimes like watching media that involves suicide. For me, I have this weird thing where I feel kind of helpless in a way that I'm used to being able to do something about it. And so it gives me a weird sense of anxiety, because I'm like, it's just like, this is something that I usually have a lot more of a like active role in, and so hearing it happen without being able to do anything has a weird, it's very funny, but like it comes from like, yeah, just being like, I know this, I know what you could do, and like not feeling powerless. It's very funny that happens to me every time I see things with suicidal characters. But as like as a character who's thinking about suicide, I mean, like Charlie, I think did like, there was actually a lot of things I can point to that were like decent suicide intervention stuff. Which for, a 17-year-old is pretty impressive. But it's also, I think there was a lot of the character of Frank that I was like, that is not that far from actual people. Like, especially, veterans, suicide rates are super high, and like, and like, even when he's talking about, he has his gun, and like, and you can't take that away from a soldier, and that's a very common refrain, and that's like something that gets talked about a lot when doing like suicide intervention with veterans, and and what you were saying about him going back and forth about if he wanted to live or die, like I think that's that is a lot of suicide intervention, is just kind of talking with someone about the two things, and like, what the reasons to live and the reasons to die, and then kind of like helping them get to a place where they are choosing to live. But it is like a very I thought that his also the fact that he is planning out the suicide again makes him even higher risk too. So I was like, this poor kid, Charlie, is 17 years old. He's being asked to do some extremely heavy lifting when it comes to suicide intervention, which was another anxiety I was having. I was like, you're a child. Do you have to do a really hard suicide intervention? But yeah, so that was another thing that made me very anxious for Charlie. Which I was like, I kept having to be like, I know it's a movie, he's not going to do it, but I was just like, it was very overwhelming emotionally for me, because I was just like, you're putting a child in a very hard situation.
I'm so sorry. This gave you a lot of anxiety.
It's so funny though. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, yeah, I occupy a very silly place of just being more used to doing suicide intervention, so it's hard to watch. But
I don't know if I'd call it a silly place. Like
it's like not like I have considered suicide, or like, I mean, I guess it's like there's a lot of people who can't watch content about suicide for other reasons, whereas I have like a more weird reason why it's hard for me to watch it. But I mean, but Charlie, okay, so at the first time he says, like, Frank says that he's going to like, I think he says he's going to blow his brains out or something at the end of the weekend, and I was like, oh wow, so I was expecting the movie thing of like Charlie to be like, oh, I don't like what you're saying you're gonna do, and doing that, like, I'm not gonna say the word suicide or killing yourself, but he instantly is like, are you talking about killing yourself? And I was like, yes, Charlie, that's how you do that. You ask about suicide. So, which is like, a lot of people in movies don't do that, so that was exciting to me. And then just his, like, in when he has the gun in that climax scene with the Chekhov's gun scene, where I'm also like, oh my god, Chekhov's gun, and this is like really high suicide risk. So it's almost like the Chekhov's gun made it even worse. I was like, at least when you're talking to someone, there's not the rule of Chekhov's gun, but in a movie there is. But
well, and I also really liked how Charlie, and I'm not a suicide prevention counselor, so I don't know if this is a good move on his part, but it felt good to me. so he knows this all along. This horrible thing is underlying all of this weekend, but he's, especially when he gets to know Frank and gets to like him, he's really trying hard to keep him active and to keep him out of the hotel room.
Yeah.
Let's go for a ride. Let's get up. Let's go do this thing. It's a beautiful day. Let's keep on keeping on.
Right.
And
which is engaging him. And I think that, like, it's one of those things where I don't think that's necessarily harmful, but I was also, which I think it's important. It's an important part of safety planning, definitely, to, like, have what are we going to do today? But then there was, like, because he had a very specific plan, it made me a little bit worried that I was like, okay, we can only do this for so long and he's in your care. So how do we get to a point where we can even, like, safety plan even more than that? But yeah, I think having, like, him out and doing stuff definitely helped, and kind of, like, being around, like, I mean, Charlie winds up being around him the whole movie, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there is that one scene where we have Frank makes Charlie go out to get cigarettes, or no, cigars, I think, and, like, aspirin, because he has a headache. And then I was like, oh god, if Charlie, like, walks out, and I was like, he doesn't think that, like, Frank is okay, right? Because it seems like you should stay.
Right, but and we know that Charlie is feeling that because he's a little reluctant to go, but then you have the scene where he actually almost leaves and then turns back,
which is, I was like, yes.
Go to him. You know, you're not stupid. You know he's pulling something on you, because he's done this before. He's lied to you before. He's misled you before. So why is this any different?
Right. And then he comes back in and sees that he is making the gun. What is it called when he sets up his gun for
assembling it? I guess
some military thing. That was what the hoo-ah, like that military, the lieutenant that taught Al Pacino how to. That was what he was teaching. It was how to do the gun thing, where you assemble the gun with your blindfold on.
Without doing it, or without seeing. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. And okay, I must say, that is one of the things that I left this movie feeling grateful for and actually happy about, because I really wanted to watch this movie because I honestly thought it was going to be terrible. I remember only hearing about the car scene.
Oh god.
And I'm just like, this movie is so cliche, and we've watched so many of these cliche movies, and this is just going to be terrible. And then you find that, obviously, is this a perfect film? No, but you find an actor who did the work, man. He did the research. Yeah. And it shows in this performance. And I guess the more we talk about it, the more we have been talking about it, although I don't agree, and I think it's Crip Face. You can do all the research in the world. It's still Crip Face. I guess I see, in quotation marks, air quotes, why he was given the Oscar for this. He put so much work into really bringing this person to life. And that's amazing. It is amazing to watch an actor be a master at their craft.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is... I think I agree with that somewhat. I think it's hard. I do just get so distracted at this point by these sighted actors things. Like, it is one of those things that's similar to blind person driving. I have just become, as we do this podcast, more and more just, like, so little patience for it, that I don't like, because I think in a lot of ways it is, I mean, even though it was just him who was nominated for an Academy Award, there's a lot in this movie that just feels like an Academy Awards movie in a way that gets, like, parodied about.
Oh, definitely.
Like, it was before we had, like, the endless parodies about what makes an Academy Awards movie, but it felt like this movie was an integral part of creating those. Like, it was one of the 15 movies that probably all had such similar kinds of things in it that, that became the Academy Award formula film. And so I think that just, like, it bothered me in a way of just being like, what is this movie about? Like, I just did not, I felt like so much happens in this movie, and I guess part of it was I liked Charlie, and I didn't really like anyone else at all. Okay, like, I just kind of I didn't really like Frank that much. I thought that he was kind of just, like, I felt like what he had done to Charlie was really unfair, and he had put, like, and so it was really hard to see how their relationship grew when he was so obviously in a position of power over Charlie, and just being completely, like, you know, blasé about that, and not really, like, recognizing that in any sort of meaningful way. And it's like, oh, you know, they're kind of, like, I guess, I mean, the point in the end was that he was, like, a father figure, was basically what they chalked it up to be, but it just felt like it was sort of an abuse of power, and that, like, Charlie didn't ask for this, like, he didn't ask for any of this, and he has a family at home, like, it's not like that he, like, you know, doesn't have a supportive family. The whole point of the entire movie is set up because he wants to go visit his family for Christmas. He doesn't have enough money to do so. Like, you know, he does, like, it's like this weird thing of, like, this kid doesn't even really necessarily, we don't really understand why he would need a different father figure. Like, it was just a lot of the emotional stakes felt completely gone to me, that I was just not really sure why we, like, just so much of it was just like, why are we doing this? And then even with, like, the suicide, like, subplot, I just was not really, I didn't feel like we ever really cracked what Frank's, like, what was kind of the point of him, or, like, I guess what were the things behind him feeling suicidal. Like, we didn't fully explore those, like, in a weird way. Like, even though he's, like, such a cantankerous character that complains all the time, we didn't really get a good sense of, like, what was, you know, what were the factors that were making him feel suicidal. I guess that he was, like, you know, he didn't have much of a, I mean, okay, so, okay, we do kind of figure this out. Like, he doesn't have much of a life.
There's that, he doesn't have much of a life. There's that really horrible, awkward dinner scene, that a horrible moment that Frank forces Charlie into, essentially. And we find out we found out why Frank went blind, and we find out a little bit about his military background, which isn't as clear cut and clean as Frank might want you to think.
Right. Because he's visiting Frank, like, decides he wants to spend Thanksgiving with his brother, he's estranged from, and we really barely meet the brother. We mostly meet the brother's, like, his nephew, I guess. Yeah, who's played by Bradley Whitford.
Well, that's also one of the only times in the movie we ever see Frank get physical with somebody.
Right, yeah, it is. Which, like, Bradley Whitford is a total asshole in this movie as well. That's another white dude asshole thing. I forgot about him. He gives a whole other flavor to white dude assholes. I mean, really, truly, it is impressive how many white dude asshole characters you can get in one movie. It's really a feat of engineering, I believe. Because Bradley Whitford is kind of like he's just kind of unnecessarily abrasive, sort of, and just, like, picking a fight all the time.
He doesn't want Frank there, and he's going to make sure that everybody knows it, and mostly Frank.
Yeah, and just, like, constantly, saying how terrible he is.
Well, and Frank is not in the wrong either, to be honest. I mean, nobody deserves to have their entire story outed at the dinner table for someone who doesn't know and without their permission. But Frank's not a saint either. I mean, he comes over to these people's house totally uninvited, just shows up. Hey, how you doing? Let's be friends. Acts like a jerk, misnames Bradley Whitford's wife on purpose all the time.
Yeah.
So, and then infers that, you know, oh, well, you just aren't, you know, sexually satifying her.
Yeah, which is just like,
Wow.
It's hard to like any of the characters when that's happening, other than Charlie, who's just kind of caught in the crosshairs of all this. And like Charlie sort of is like, oh, like tries to like sort of de-escalate the situation, but is completely unsuccessful. But yeah, yeah, that's the one time we do see him see Frank like actually physically assault someone. But it's also one of those things where you're kind of like, you kind of at that point want to do that to Bradley Whitford because he's being a piece of shit as well. So
kind of had it coming. I'm like, they're not, both characters are in the wrong.
Exactly, yeah.
Bradley Whitford's a little more in the wrong in that particular
Right,
scene,
exactly. It's really true. They're both in the wrong, but he is more in the wrong. Yeah, it is just but it's the whole thing. You're just like, none of this needed to happen.
No, also Charlie is the one who finally gets the Colonel to let go of him.
Right.
Because he's got his hands on good Colonel's shoulders and he's like, Colonel, let go, Colonel, let go.
Which he shouldn't have been touching him without
No, he shouldn't have. I'm surprised that Frank didn't round on him and be like, don't touch me.
Yeah.
But this is when they were kind of sort of bonding. So the fact that he didn't do that is a sign of progress, I guess. Maybe, in their relationship, at least.
Yeah. So they're kind of, at that point, they're starting to become more of a team. It's one of those weird things where you're just like, you have trouble really tracking entirely the progression of their relationship. It's just, that it has to start at one place and end one place, and that's probably the most distinct it gets. And then in the middle, it's just kind of a little bit all over the place where, like they kind of go back and forth on really trusting each other, and then they'll be like, they just, they mostly, like, Charlie just seems like a pretty just generally accommodating person too, so it is one of those things where, in a way it kind of makes it harder to show him like warming up to Frank, because he is not especially like, he's not like angrily assertive. He is in a way, I'm like, that does kind of feel like an organ kind of level of passivity to like standing up for what's going on. I was like, that seems about right. So that was legit. But he's just not especially he's gonna like call Frank out on things occasionally when it seems like he needs to, but he is not going to just like randomly pick fights with him unless there's like a really good reason for it. So you kind of have so I don't know, like them becoming closer, it's like that dynamic is a little bit harder to track, because he's probably not, it's not like he's mad at Frank to begin with, or he is, but he's like not in a very, it's not in a way where he's like just picking on Frank or anything. He's just kind of like mad because Frank keeps lying to him, so you're like, yeah, okay, that's reasonable. But yeah, I don't know what, God, but
but in the end, go ahead.
Oh, just that he, the reasons why that we were talking about before, like the reasons why Frank is suicidal that he lists are that a woman will never love him. That's one of them, right?
Right. All he wants and he gives this little speech about all he really wants is a woman's, because this man loves women, but all he wants is a woman's arms wrapped around him, a woman's legs wrapped around him. But what he mostly wants is someone to wake up to every morning.
Right, which is,
And it's, whether it's a man or a woman or whoever, whatever gender you prefer, it's not, in the end, yes, Frank likes women because Frank likes women and he's a straight man and he likes to have sex with women. But in the end, it's about loneliness. It's about finding a companion who wants to be around you, who wants to love you. He has, in his own weird ass fucked up way, he has love that he would like to give someone. He would like to dote on somebody. I feel like he's the kind of man who would buy his partner flowers and call them or text them in the middle of the day just to see how they were doing, or cook dinner for them, or he wants to spoil the shit out of his partner.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
It's not. Well, we have a clip that we were talking about playing. Do we want to play that so we can talk about
why
it?
not? Sure.
Okay. So this is them on the airplane. This is when Charlie and Frank are on the airplane to New York. So this is when Charlie is still just very much like, I don't want to be here. Right. Don't want to be on this plane. And so this is just kind of banter between the two of them while they're on the plane, and Frank is just, I guess, imparting some life advice onto Charlie. I say in quotation marks.
He calls it pearls of wisdom.
Well, so you could, I guess we'll play the clip and you can be the judge of how wise his pearls of wisdom are.
Women. What could you say? Who made them? God must have been a fucking genius. The hair. They say the hair is everything, you know. Have you ever buried your nose in a mountain of curls? Just wanted to go to sleep forever. Or lips. And when they touched yours were like that first swallow of wine after you just crossed the desert. Tits. Hoo-ah. Big ones, little ones. Nipples staring right out at you like secret searchlights. Legs. I don't care if they're Greek columns or secondhand Steinways. What's between them? Passport to heaven. I need a drink. Yes, Mr. Sims. There's only 2 syllables in this whole wide world worth hearing. Pussy.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Oh my god. Oh my gosh.
Yikes.
I mean, that.
I mean, okay, so look, as a self-identifying woman who loves women who loves women, I like chicks. Anyway, I can get behind everything he's saying in that speech 100%.
Do you think that there's a more important 2 syllables in the world than pussy?
Yes. So I amend that statement. I can.
I mean, you're allowed to. I will not stop you from having the opinion.
Right. Like, obviously, there's so much more to a woman or a person that you like or want to spend the rest of your life with than their body. You know, right. I get it. But as far as like the most base, like, pleasures of the flesh type of speech, you know, okay, all right, yeah, he's a dude who loves him some lady.
I mean, also the scent of a woman, also one of his favorites, apparently. Which I don't know if I think he probably gets into later in that clip, but yeah.
Well, he has this talent, or he's very good at sniffing and smelling and identifying women's perfume.
Which, another trope. It's like, doing this podcast, it's fascinating to find the weirdest shit. Do you know any blind people who actually, like, can name everyone's perfumes?
No.
Yeah.
No, but I know, almost all the blind people I know have very sensitive noses.
Right. But it's like, some weird thing that they're like, oh, blind people must love to recognize people's perfume. But we also all want to drive / do drive in a climactic scene.
I mean, okay, not gonna lie, I've seen bits and parts of that scene because I believe they tried to recreate it on Mythbusters, actually.
Oh.
And they tried this experiment with a blind driver and a sighted guide. I'm not sure they got the same results as they did in Scent of a Woman, but but
Yeah, sounds dangerous. That's a dangerous
it was
thing.
very dangerous. Yeah. But it was very funny. It was very funny to watch Adam sit in the front seat and Jamie try and drive blindfolded. It's pretty hilarious. It's a good episode. Yeah. But I actually, yes, the car scene, and everybody remembers the car scene, and the car scene is fine and it's fun and it is nice to see. Yes, it's incredibly dangerous and you should never, ever, 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 ever do something like that. But my vision teacher gave me the same opportunity. Unfortunately, I could never take her up on it, but she's like, look, I want to take you way out of town into, go to Canuck or go to a field or something, some unpopulated area in Alaska, which is very easy to do. And I want to get out of the car and I want to let you drive.
Yeah.
So you can, if you want that, so you can just feel it. Just so you can experience that feeling. And it wasn't because she was like, oh no, you'll never be able to drive. Oh, I'm so sad for you. No. She was just like, hey, you as an adult person have the right to experience what this feels like. And if you want to do that with me, we'll find the time to do it.
I never really understood that though, because what driving is not a feeling. Most people who are thinking rationally when they first start driving are terrified because they know that what they're doing is dangerous, and not knowing how to do it makes it scary. And so it just kind of seems to me like it's not about the experience of driving as much as it is about how many doors open up for you when you can actually learn how to drive. And I wouldn't want to, learning the beginning where you're learning how to drive is the worst part. That's the part you want to that where it's scary and you want to get over that hump so you can have the privileges of being a driver. And so for me, I never understood the allure of okay, so I can have all the shitty parts of driving with none of the good parts. Why would I want that? It's just, and it feels kind of like a denial of what our actual experiences are, because it's just what we want is less it's just people associate driving with having a certain amount of freedom that will never be given that opportunity to have. And it doesn't really matter if we get to go out in the middle of nowhere. We still are just not awarded that freedom in society. So
I suppose I just honestly wanted to know. I mean, at the time I wanted to. Now I could give a shit. But at the time, I wanted to know what all the fuss was about. I wanted to know what it felt like.
Yeah.
I was curious. I was curious as to what it felt like.
I think I was too. I think it was just in retrospect, I was curious what it felt like to have able privilege is really more what it was than anything else.
Yeah. Okay, I hear that. Yeah, I get that. But what the real treat of this movie, honestly, because, whatever, the driving scene is whatever. They get to drive a Ferrari. That's really cool. Cars don't do it for me. Yay.
Yeah.
The real cool scene of this movie was actually the tango scene.
Yeah.
I couldn't help myself. I had a stupid grin on my face for pretty much the entire scene.
It's a pretty...
Yeah.
Al Pacino does a tango dance with a girl who's kind of... That whole thing is a little weird. Then she's just sitting alone waiting for her date, and he's like, you're gonna dance with me.
Right. Well, the stuff at the table is a little cringy because I'm like, whoa, back it up, Frankie boy. You're coming on. You're coming on too strong.
Yeah.
Way too strong. But he doesn't necessarily force her into it. I mean, if she, yes, she declines. Yes, she's like, oh, I don't know, and yes, he's a bit more persistent and pushy than I would like. I mean, honestly, if it were me, I probably would have told him to go fuck himself, even if he was blind. But movie logic. So they get out on the floor and they do this. I have no reference for tango dancing. I have a friend who does tango dancing, but I don't have much of a reference. But they do this really lovely little tango, and they're having fun. And he's not, to his credit, he's not being gross. He's not being handsy. He doesn't, he found this woman that really wanted to dance the tango and had never really been given that opportunity because her husband really wasn't into it. And he's like, okay, cool, let's go dance the tango. And then her husband shows up, and I was like, oh fuck, here's where we're going to get into it. Like, there's going to be an altercation. Da 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 da. Does not happen at all. But her husband is like, oh,
like
Donna,
sweet.
I'm so happy you finally found someone to dance the tango with. It was this really sweet little scene.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that was in this movie. And it just felt like, oh, wow, here's this like little nougaty center in this kind of prickly person.
Yeah.
So I liked it. I thought it was a really sweet scene.
I mean, that one was weird because you expect it to be an abusive partner because the way she doesn't say like he doesn't. What doesn't she say that he wouldn't let her, or is that just something that is kind of implied by what she says? Like, I thought she was. It might just be that it was implied, but.
Yeah, I don't think it wasn't that he wouldn't let her. He just wasn't into it.
Right. But then it's like the way she framed it, I was like, oh, so he's like abusive, like just without the context. Like, oh, he won't let me do it. He doesn't like tangoing.
Yeah.
So
I wasn't sure.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if she had said he wouldn't let her do it, that would have just been functionally wrong. So it must have just been an implied thing because like that would have been a plot hole then because it seemed like he was totally fine with her doing it. So, yeah, it was just like one of those things where I thought they were setting it up that her boyfriend sucked, but then he was very nice, and you were just kind of like, I don't know, I felt very weird about that whole thing because I was like, this poor woman is just sitting around waiting. Like,
I know,
but
yeah, no, it's okay. No, I think I can tell where you're going, and I get it. I totally get it. I mean, if I'm alone in a club or a bar or whatever, usually I have a book with me, and I don't want to be messed with by somebody. Leave me the fuck alone. I didn't come here with friends. I didn't come here to socialize with you.
Right,
I came here because maybe I like the music or the atmosphere or something.
But I don't want to be told I have to dance the tango randomly.
Right. No, I don't want to do that. Melissa doesn't want to do that. But Donna
seemed like,
bless her heart, was kind of into it.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. When her husband shows up, though, I was like, can we just have her husband and Charlie, or maybe she can come too, but I'd rather see a movie about the three of them, because I just cannot handle all of the, like, shitty white dude energy in this movie. There's just a million shitty white dudes, and there's only, like, that husband character is the only one who is like, oh, look, he's, like, nice. He's just, like, oh, good, he seems like a just... decent run-of-the-mill partner.
I want to shake your hand. Let me shake both your hands. Yeah, I'm just like, oh my god, that's really cute. Their relationship reminded me a lot of my friends in Iowa. One of them is, she loves to dance, and she actually loves the tango. She's the one who knows how to tango. But her partner, I don't want to speak for him, but he doesn't dance a whole lot.
Right.
But in that relationship, he's totally cool with her going out to like Latin dance or going to tango or whatever and dancing and doing what she wants to do.
Right, which is a cute little thing, though. It is funny. It does make you wonder why Donna couldn't just go to a tango class before this.
I know, right?
Like she's just sitting around waiting for a random blind stranger to like
teach her how to tango.
Yeah, it's just bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, clearly Donna must have been going to some classes because like Lady knew all the steps. Come on.
No, but she hadn't been apparently. So I think it's also like truly confusing to me because I'm like, if she really was that excited to do it, there are ways to go about this. Like it's not like because that's why I assumed her boyfriend was abusive because I'm like, why wouldn't she be taking classes if this was her dream to do this? Like she doesn't need to do it with her partner.
Actually, counter programming, if you want a movie with that relationship but it's flipped and it's the man who's actually learning how to dance, not necessarily in secret but learning how to dance and fulfilling that relationship, Shall We Dance, either the one with the original Japanese or the one with the remake with Richard Gere, it's really good. They're cute. They're super cute.
It's a cute, but yeah, this is one of the 10 movies in this movie that just randomly is, I know. Just get a couple scenes from this other movie about tango dancing. I don't know. Oh my god, this movie is so fucking long. Like, part of me was just like, at the end of watching it, I was like, should we do a 2-part episode? Because like... it's so much to talk about. It's such a long movie, and it is also just like the amount of things that happen in the movie, and just it's really, and it's not like it has some sort of clear idea behind it, so we can't just talk about a clear idea of this long movie. It's
Right,
like just so much random shit.
It's a lot. It's a long movie where a lot of things happen, and for the most part, I guess because we have that climax in the hotel room, we're basically leading up to. I mean, we've pretty much resolved that storyline essentially. So now we've resolved Frank's storyline. So now we need to resolve Charlie's storyline,
right?
Because he, all throughout all this stuff happening, he keeps calling Philip Seymour Hoffman. And at first, he's like, Philip Seymour Hoffman is like, no, it's cool. My dad's got it. Don't worry about it. We're good. And then it just turns from bad to worse. And his dad doesn't have it. We're not exactly sure. But we need to go home and figure it out. And so Frank drops Charlie off at his disciplinary hearing at school. And Frank is like, okay, what are you going to say? And Charlie's like, I'm not really sure, but I'm sure something will come to me in the moment or something. Okay, cool. Well, so Charlie leaves and they're having this, everybody's up on stage and the dean is introing everything. And during the dean's speech, somebody else walks into the room and it's Frank. And so
of course,
Frank comes back. Of course. So Frank comes back to help Charlie in the disciplinary hearing. And I suppose this is because, because obviously their relationship is growing, but I think Frank does it because Charlie saved his life, absolutely saved his life. And now Frank has come back to return the favor, and he's going to help Charlie deal with he's going to save Charlie's academic life. Right.
And part of it is like the father figure thing that we have.
Mm-hmm.
We have Philip Seymour Hoffman's father is there too, and then Charlie sits alone, so he's because his parents are in Oregon, so it's kind of like the absentee father, I guess, but he has a father figure coming to support him, which is just like, he's such like a weird random character that I'm also just like, in the real world this would not necessarily be an asset to you, that this extremely eccentric, loud, alcoholic blind man has like just randomly that is no actual relationship to you. So that is part of it, is like, who are you, why are you here? It does, but do you want to, we should probably play at least a little bit of the speech.
We should play a little bit of this amazing, incredible speech that Al Pacino gives, and it basically sums up the entire movie, essentially.
So we should also mostly end with this and then talk about it, and then we can do our Blind as Cutie. So I can make this episode shorter than the movie. We can just get there.
Barely.
Yes, barely, but I think we can do it. Okay. I will play that clip now.
Bad men. You hurt this boy, you're gonna be bad bums. The lot of you. And Harry, Jimmy, Trent, wherever you are out there, fuck you too!
Stand down, Mr. Slade.
I'm not finished. As I came in here, I heard those words, cradle of leadership. Well, when the bow breaks, the cradle will fall, and it has fallen here. It has fallen. Makers of men, creators of leaders, be careful what kind of leaders you're producing here. I don't know if Charlie's silence here today is right or wrong. I'm not a judge or jury, but I can tell you this. He won't sell anybody out to buy his future. And that, my friends, is called integrity. That's called courage. Now that's the stuff leaders should be made of. Now I have come to the crossroads in my life. I always knew what the right path was. Without exception, I knew, but I never took it. You know why? It was too damn hard. Now here's Charlie. He's come to the crossroads. He has chosen a path. It's the right path. It's a path made of principle that leads to character. Let him continue on his journey. You hold this boy's future in your hands, committee. It's a valuable future. Believe me, don't destroy it, protect it. Embrace it. It's gonna make you proud one day, I promise you.
So yeah, so that's the movie. What is there to
Yeah, I mean it's all there, and I think I like the bit in the speech, especially where he's talking about Charlie's soul and about how he has integrity. The whole reason why Frank can make this speech is Charlie.
Right, because he is the one who he is the protagonist of the movie, like, actually. But yeah, it is it's a lot.
It's a lot. But yeah, I think we're about ready to rate this. Rate this puppy.
Hoo-wah! Let's rate it. Hoo-wah!
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. So going into this, I honestly thought I was going to give this a much lower rating than I am. But we all know that I'm very generous with my ratings. But still, honestly. I can't stop. I am giving Scent of a Woman a 2600.
Wow, nice.
Which is very high. I know. It's incredibly high, but damn, I'm really won over by Frank and Charlie. I'm won over by Chris O'Donnell and Al Pacino. Obviously, they carry the entire movie because it's mostly them. It's mostly them on screen. But just as a person who acts and enjoys doing theater and enjoys learning about the craft and the art of acting, I think it's just his performance is just masterful. And I know I'm in a completely different place from when we started talking about this 2 hours ago. I know.
Well, it's like the movie. It's
a
a long journey that we've gone on where you come to a completely different understanding of the world by the end.
Yes, exactly. And I thought this movie was just going to be something that, we could rip on, rip on out on how crazy Al Pacino is, rip on how crazy the plot is, and da-da-da-da-da. And it's just not that. Obviously it's problematic. It's the fact that this role could have and should have gone to a blind person, but it didn't. And here we are. So I'm still going to give the movie 2600. And if you haven't seen Scent of a Woman and you have 2.5 hours in your day that you just haven't planned out yet, give it a watch. Honestly, there's a lot of worse things you could do with your afternoon for 2.5 hours than watch this movie. I was kind of flabbergasted. Nice. So
hoo-wah.
Yeah, so hoo-wah. That's my very generous 2600.
And so this may be the biggest difference between our two ratings.
Probably.
I think I'm going to give it a 2060. So factor of 10.
Okay, fair.
I mean, as a blind, his performance being blind is not, it's really not bad. It's not like he forgets that he's blind, and the plot is not, I think sometimes I'll give 20/20 to movies, or less than that, to movies that are just so ridiculous, or like the characters are just so far from the experience of a blind person. I don't think that that's necessarily the movie. I just think that it has so many of the blind tropes that I just am tired of at this point. I think that he as a character is not super likable to me. I think that it's, I mean, in the end, you kind of like, there's kind of an arc. I just think that it is so long. And it is like, there's not as much of a celebration at all of blindness, or just kind of like, even though we kind of, in a way, it's not necessarily a depressing movie. It's just like, him being a blind character is just such a weird part of this, and I think it also is representative of just what I truly despise, which is like the Academy Awards thing of like only rewarding when abled actors play disabled characters, which is horrible, because that is like, why would you not just be okay with that but actually give it an award, like, which is like a serious thing in the film industry, that like the Academy Awards are like actually really matter to people's careers, and it really fucking sucks that like that is what they constantly are choosing to actually give awards to, which is like, you know, the biggest stamp of approval you can have, basically. And I think that, you know, this may be one of the chances we get on the podcast to have a specifically blind character that's a, you know, representation of that phenomenon. And it's just, it's not brave to play a disabled character. It's just shitty, and it takes away those roles from actual blind people who would do a better job and wouldn't have to learn how to be a blind person. And I think that also just, I don't know, I just wanted to like him a little bit more, and I think there's just so much just obnoxious white dude on display in this movie that it's just, my blood pressure was running so high. Like, I just couldn't handle I just didn't like any of the characters with Charlie, and to the point that it was I could feel it in my body. Like, they were actually making me mad. Like, and so it was just like a very exhausting watch to do that for 2.5 hours. Yeah, but you know, I think that like, I think in some ways it was just, for me, I felt like it just kind of pushed a lot of my own buttons, and that probably reflects also in my rating. So I don't know if it's all the movie's fault, but I do think that and it could also be that we've just seen way too many movies post this movie, you know, fall into similar tropes and whatnot. So, you know, you never know what exactly it is, but I don't know. I mean, it could have a worse than,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard considering the last movie we watched was The Color of Paradise, which actually has a blind kid, playing a blind character. Yeah. And it's just, his performance is so amazing. And he acts, of course, because he's playing a character that is not himself. But when you hire a disabled person and cast a disabled person, you don't have to work harder to add that extra layer to that performance, because that layer is already there. Right. We laud and we applaud Al Pacino because he had to work so hard, and he did. And that shows in his performance. You know, he's not a bumbling idiot. He's not Mr. Magoo. He's not, you know, Frank feels like a real lived in character, but Al Pacino is an able-bodied actor who had to work very hard to put on the costume of disability.
Right. Exactly. And then The Color of Paradise didn't even, I don't think, it wound up not getting an Academy Award that it was nominated for. And this movie, Al Pacino won an Academy Award. So, you know, it is just one of those things where we reward bad behavior, and just kind of tired of it.
It doesn't feel like, it feels like an injustice. All of these few disabled actors and disabled people behind the camera, and we're working so hard to get the recognition that we deserve. And like you said, I mean, Oscars don't necessarily mean anything. I mean, shoot, Halle Berry won an Oscar for Monsters Ball and still wasn't Catwoman. So
right. Well, they don't mean anything Oscars, to the quality of movies, but they do mean something to the how you get movies made.
True. You're right. It is a lot easier. It is a lot easier for a person with Oscar, you know, clout behind them and awards and stuff to do projects like that. Absolutely. Right. And it's so hard for us to get our foot in the door already. And when we finally do get our foot in the door, we're not recognized for it.
Right. And that Al Pacino was the thing that, they were also nominated for like Best Picture and stuff, but he won because it's like, you were an actor who played a disabled character. Like that is the most important part, is like that, not just that it's like you made a movie about a disabled person, which, granted, like whatever about the screenplay, but like still it is,
right.
It is still frustrating that we're kind of rewarding the more problematic. I mean, I don't really think abled people should be writing our stories necessarily when we don't get the chance to write our own stories, but but you know what? This actually is kind of, we're just kind of slowly wafting into our movie for next week, honestly. So
what are we watching next week?
Yeah. So we are watching you're going to have to bring a movie that is not from the 90s next, Melissa, because we have to get out of the 90s, but it's not going to be next week. We're going to the year after 92, 93, for the film Blue, directed by Derek Jarman, who is a queer director and who died from HIV/AIDS in 94, and so this was the film that he made the last year of his life when he had basically gone entirely blind, and it was made from his his hospital bed, and it is the entire film is a blue screen with an audio track, so exactly like Scent of a Woman in so many ways, but but we are doing a movie that actually was written by someone who was currently blind at the time of making the movie. So
that's fantastic. I am super stoked now to watch this.
Yeah, it's get ready for it. It is a definitely it's also very sad. But we're I think gonna have a lot to talk about. And then yes, please get us out of the 90s. I'm asking you to get us out because this is our 4th 90s movie in a row. So got to get out of the 90s.
I think I can do that for us.
Okay, perfect. I've appreciated. Sorry, because I'm making it. I'm creating this problem as well by having 2 different 90s movies that I'm also picking. Okay. Well, I think that's good. You want to do our blind decides and get out of here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So my blind decide for this week is the Hulu original series, Difficult People. It was canceled, I think, a couple years ago. It was on for 3 seasons. And it stars Julie Klausner and Billy Eichner. And they just are play difficult people in New York that are just like trying to make it in different sorts of media like industries, and it is very funny. There are a lot of, they're both playing Jewish characters, so there's lots of jokes about, they both are Jewish, but there's a lot of like just funny Jewish family jokes to me, and then there's also a lot of very funny media, like just industry jokes, so it is very much up my alley. But it's my favorite thing is Julie Klausner's character has a husband who works at PBS, and like at one episode they're like doing a podcast, and there's like someone from NPR who's there, and he's like the feud between people at PBS and NPR is so serious. No one takes it serious. Like, it's like people don't realize how much we can never associate with people from NPR. There's a lot of hilarious jokes with that. But yeah, it is a fun show that has just like a lot of, it is primarily like a lot of queer characters, and just a lot of ridiculous jokes and situations. But yeah, so I've been rewatching that with Conrad, and so figured I'd plug it. But yeah, go back and watch it. It's a Not well. I think it was not watched as much as it deserved to be watched. But that's the difficult people. It's on Hulu because it's a Hulu original show.
I will definitely check that out because I remember when Hulu was first touting all of their like, we have original content, and this is one of the shows, and I didn't really. It was on my list, but I never really gave it a chance. So yeah,
Check it out.
Definitely gonna check this one out.
It's really fun.
Yeah. So, uncoincidence, my blind aside is also a rewatch that I did this week. So I'm bringing the first season of the canceled and then revived animated show, Tuca and Birdie.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize it was revived.
It is revived. It has been picked up for a second season on Adult Swim, and I think it's premiering sometime this year. Yeah, and I'm so happy because I mean the closest thing you can compare Tuca and Birdie to is BoJack Horseman. But for those who haven't watched, Tuca and Birdie tells the story of anthropomorphic animals, mostly birds, and the main characters are Tuca, a toucan played by Tiffany Haddish, Birdie, a songbird played by Ali Wong, and Speckle, a robin who is Birdie's boyfriend played by Stephen Yoon. And I absolutely adore this show. It is a little bit more absurd, can be more absurd in the animation than something like BoJack. It's a little bit more cartoony. Yeah,
it's Lisa Hannawalt who is who created the show and also is the BoJack's visual creator, basically.
Yes, yeah. So it looks it kind of like has its visual style grounded there, but this show takes everything a little bit further. I mean, there are anthropomorphized plant people in this universe, which is pretty cool. But I think this show is amazing because this show goes to some incredibly dark places, and it's also nice to see a show that the central protagonists are female identifying characters and see what it's like for them and what they're going through. That's not to say that BoJack doesn't have amazing female characters, because it does 1,000%. And I feel like, granted, we only have one season of Tuca and Birdie compared to 6 seasons of BoJack Horseman. Right. So these characters we haven't gotten to really dive deep into them quite yet, but we learn a lot about Birdie and a lot about her past. And it's beautiful and sad and bittersweet. And in the end, things aren't resolved, obviously, because it's the end of the first season, but it's about the healing process. It's coming to terms with something horrible that happened in Birdie's past, and then starting over and learning how to heal, and also learning how to accept yourself too. Yeah. And accept the part of you that's been hurt. So
it's also, I mean, like some of the like medical stuff in that show, I actually had to stop for a little bit because it was like too triggering, but it's a very good show. But it is definitely, especially if you have like medical trauma as well, there's some like stuff that's very hard. And of course, a lot of, but it is a really, it's a very, very good show. But
It's brilliant, and I'm glad I rewatched it. I actually sat down and watched it all in one go. It's 10 half-hour episodes, so it really won't take up too much of your time. But the voice talent is spot on. It's incredible. It's really good. And I'm so glad that these characters are finally getting a chance to live and breathe on Adult Swim. So hopefully the show doesn't change and Adult Swim lets them keep doing what they're doing, because it's I've watched my fair share of Adult Swim. This is definitely much more of a mature show. But I think it will find a really good home there, and that means I get to watch more of Tuca and Birdie.
Yeah. Oh well, I'm really excited. I did not know that it had gotten resuscitated, revived. So that's great news.
Yeah, that's Tuca and Birdie. You can catch the first season all on Netflix, and the second season sometime this year on Adult Swim.
Nice. Oh well, that's some good news for me. But yes, I definitely second that. recommendation. Our theme song is by Lucia Fasano. Our YouTube is Citizen White Cane Podcast. Our Twitter is White Cane Pod. Our Instagram and our Facebook are both at Citizen White Cane. If you'd like to send us an email, you can send it to citizenwhitecanepod@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voice message, there's a link in the show notes. Just say hoo-ah and do your best, like Al Pacino, hoo-ah, and we will play all the good ones.
Tell us, absolutely. Tell us what you're doing with all your disability money that you've stocked up. What trip are you taking?
Or just even if you need to pay rent, so you have absolutely no money to your name, if you could theoretically somehow magically not have money obligations, how would you plan a trip? What would be your dream disability money trip? And also if you did count how many times, because I want hoo-wah related content, so if you have a different number of the amount of times that Al Pacino says it in this movie, let us know what you think. All those things, there's a link in the show notes. And come back next week. We're going to be getting really it's gonna be
getting real blue.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that, but that is what we will be doing. And we'll see you there. Bye.
Sounds good. Bye.
Hoo-wah.
Hoo-wah.
Citizen White Cane.
Pussy.